He was talented, but at times moody and immature. I think it's been fair. How has it landed for you with Scottie Pippen?
I think it's been fair. It's been the ups and the downs. The greatness of Scottie Pippen, the improbable rise from Hamburg, Arkansas to one of the elite basketball players in the history of the game. And yes, the moody moments, the tantrum, if you want to call it that, the 1.8 seconds, the migraine in Game 7. But also, I think you got a sense for the heroics, the way he gutted through that Game 6 in 1998 when his back was deteriorating on him, the way he played that season on a surgically rehabbed ankle, all the stuff that he was going through. I thought it presented a good balance of Scottie Pippen. Maybe none of us would be happy if our flaws were presented on national television to 6 million people a week. We wouldn't be happy with that. But I thought you saw the good and the bad of Scottie.
Now, there is the mythology of Michael, 6 for 6. Everybody says, Michael goes, bring me back for a 7th title. And I'm like, J.A., there's a saying I was told years ago, always leave a party early, never leave it late. I think the Bulls at the end, J.A., and you covered them, they were old. I think at times they were offensively one-dimensional. I think they left at the perfect time. The Spurs dynasty was starting up. You were covering, I don't think they would have won the following year. Do you?
They would have had a shot, and I think they deserved the chance to fall or succeed on their own merits. I think the one argument in their favor was there really wasn't a great team ready to take it from them. The Spurs wound up having a long-term success, but at that point, Tim Duncan was in his second or third year in the league, so I'm not sure he would have been able to stand up against the seasoned, experienced Bulls. The Lakers were too young and inexperienced, even though they were very talented. There was really nobody in the East, and the Jazz were starting to fall off. Obviously, they didn't make it back to the finals that next year. So it really would have been about whether the Bulls could have sustained, and that's the great unknown. We've seen how difficult it was for the Warriors to, essentially try to win 3 in a row. If you say they were a few minutes from winning in 2017 or 2016, they basically had a chance at 3 or 4 in a row. But then you saw that fourth year, it all fell apart, right? With Durant going down and then Klay Thompson going down. So to ask that group to stay healthy for another year, to stay motivated for another year, we've been asking a lot. But I think they deserve the opportunity, and it would have been about them, not about the competition.
There's a lot of people that say Jerry Krause was unfairly blamed for stuff. I think it lands pretty accurately. I didn't cover the team, and I had heard so many Jerry Krause stories. I do think Phil Jackson comes off as so smart and so refined in this, balancing Rodman and Krause. Let's address Krause. You covered the team. Now, you told me last time when you called Jerry, he called you back. Have we been a little harsh on Jerry? Or, Steve Kerr said during the documentary, J.A., he said the guy couldn't get out of his own way. Where do you land on Krause?
And I think I told you, he didn't cultivate any allies. He had no one on his side, no one to really tell his story in the media while he was the general manager of the Bulls. He was so distrustful of the media entirely that he didn't give himself a chance. He didn't find someone to help tell his side. And even Scottie comes around at the end of the documentary and says you have to give him credit. I think Jerry was wrongfully kept out of the Hall of Fame longer than he should have. He should have gone in before Jerry Reinsdorf went into the Hall of Fame. It went in the opposite order. And, Reinsdorf should have had more blame. And people always ask me, why did Reinsdorf keep Krause along? I think he kept him around because Krause got all the blame. Reinsdorf sort of skated free. Reinsdorf also could play the good cop sometimes. But I think if you look at all the issues here, a lot of it all has to go and start with the owner, right? And one of the great revelations out of this was the fact that Reinsdorf called up Phil Jackson after it was done, say, hey, do you want to come back for another year? But by then, it was too late.
J.A. Adande, director of sports journalism at Northwestern. If you want to be a sports journalist, that's the place to go. It's a legendary reputation. And, I saw Channing Frye said this weekend, he said, modern players, they wouldn't want to play with MJ. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, LeBron is not always perfect. Kyrie Irving said no thank you. Kevin Love's a great player. He was sort of marginalized. Chris Bosh with LeBron. He's hard to play with if you're a big. What about that assertion that Michael's too rough around the edges for the modern player? You covered him. Did he have the players tolerate him or like him?
I think it's more tolerated him. I think it's interesting. You see, one of his lifelong friends is George Kohler, who appears in this documentary. That was a guy he met randomly at the airport when he first got to Chicago, and he stayed tighter with him than he has with any of his teammates over the years. But I will say, I think it's hard for any teammates to stay friends. It's such an unnatural amount of time that you spend together on planes, on buses, in meeting rooms, in locker rooms, in the showers together. So you really don't see a lot of friendships sustain among teammates because I just think they need a break from each other after it's all said and done. One thing that's interesting, if you try to imagine Jordan in the modern game, obviously the closest thing that we had to him was Kobe. You didn't see free agents rushing to sign up with Kobe Bryant when they had space under the salary cap in the last few years of his career. So maybe that indicates that Jordan might have had a hard time attracting people to come play with him in the free agency area that we've had the last 10 or 15 years compared to what it was in the 90s.
Again, J.A. Adande, you had such a unique experience covering MJ and Kobe, and I think Kobe's the closest stylistically we've ever seen to Michael. And there were some things, I always thought Kobe had a little better range than Michael did as a shooter. Michael had bigger hands, so he did a lot more stuff around the rim. Were there things covering both? One's got 5 titles, one 6. Was there anything Kobe was better at than Michael at when having covered both?
A better bad shot shooter. And if there was 1 second left, I would take Kobe to take the shot. If there's enough time, as we saw in that famous last shot in Utah, if there's enough time for Michael Jordan to set himself up to create a shot, he's going to create a better shot and give himself a better chance of making that shot than Kobe. But if there's really no time to do anything other than get the ball and take a wild shot, I'm going with Kobe Bryant, the best last-second shot maker, the guy I would take out of anybody. And you know what? I ran that premise by Phil Jackson one time, and he agreed with me. So don't take my word for it. Take Phil Jackson's word.
Well, I mean, I would argue Phil Mickelson in golf is a great tough shot maker. Tiger's the better golfer, but man, Phil got himself into a lot of trouble, but Phil was a great tough shot maker.
If you're in the bunker, if you need a flop shot, you go with Phil Mickelson, right? If you want to win the tournament, you pick Tiger Woods. So I think that's an apt comparison.
There's a poll out today that GM said KD could not play with Michael. And I know we're just guessing here, but you deal with a lot of young kids. Sometimes I think we marginalize kids in their teens and 20s, and we don't realize they're tough, but they don't have to wear it as a badge like most of us in a different generation. My gut feeling is Kevin Durant likes winning. You know, when you hear this Kevin Durant, because you uniquely are around more young people than any sports journalist or former sports journalist in America. What do you make about the assertion? No way KD could play with MJ. Too tough on him.
I think we have to look at Kevin Durant's track record of success. They were successful in Oklahoma City, and he basically made that franchise, after it moved from Seattle. And he was successful in Golden State, coming in where he was the outsider and being able to adapt, and no, it didn't last. So maybe he wouldn't be able to thrive and survive long-term with Michael Jordan, but I certainly think he could come in and adapt and have success. We've seen him in 2 places so far. I haven't had a chance to see him play in both of them yet, but of the 2 places he's played, he's been successful in both, obviously more successful with Golden State.
Was this good journalism to you, this documentary, or just great storytelling? Were you comfortable with the level of journalism?
Great storytelling, first and foremost. And I never looked at it as an act of journalism from the fact that they needed Michael Jordan's approval to sign off on it for the footage to be aired in the first place. You'd never go into reporting a story with that type of contingencies. But the storytelling and just, as it went on, I think you realize more and more that they weren't trying to tell the complete story, that they didn't really have the means, even with 10 hours, to tell the entirety of the story. And there's a lot that they left out. Some of it little things, some of it big things, but they went with what was going to generate the most reaction. So you don't really hear about Shawn Kemp in the 1996 NBA Finals, even though he played a big part in getting the Sonics back in that series. Why? Because the Jordan versus Peyton storyline was so compelling. The reactions, the video, the verbal back and forth between those two. So they went with that. They turned the 96 Finals into Peyton versus Jordan when it was more than that. But for the purposes of the story they were trying to tell, and the video that they had in their hands, that was the way to go.
Great stuff. J.A. Adande. director of sports journalism, Northwestern, the Medill School of Journalism, top in the country. What a pleasure it's been to talk to you a couple times.
I'm going to call you out to have you join our class at some point coming up in the next few weeks. So that's all I ask in return. I'm calling you out on the national show.
Those kids can learn virtually nothing from me, but you can call me. I'll go anytime you want me. You got me, bud. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Colin.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, it is funny, this kind of Durant can't play with MJ. I'll address how young guys would have played with MJ next. It's the Herd.